What if the clearest thing you could offer your horse was nothing? No constant pressure, no micromanaging, just relaxed awareness, clear boundaries, and the ability to notice what your horse is telling you in each moment. In this episode, Stacey Carter of Heart Centered Horsemanship explains why non-dominance isn't passivity, how horses respond to who we are long before they respond to what we ask, and why doing less may be the key to a safer, softer, more connected partnership. Welcome, friends and fellow horse fiends. I'm Anna Fox of Equus Enlightened, and I'm your host. This is the podcast for horse lovers who want more than simply getting their horse to behave. You want to feel confident in the saddle. You want to understand what your horse is trying to tell you. And you want the partnership you imagined when horses first captured your heart. Even if fear, frustration, or years of conflicting advice have made that connection feel harder to find. Here, we explore the science and soul of horsemanship, equine behavior, nervous system regulation, rider psychology, and compassionate training that helps you become a thinking rider who creates a thinking horse. Because you don't need more pressure, more perfection, or another person telling you to just push through. You need the awareness, skills, and confidence to make decisions that feel right for both you and your horse. Whether you're pursuing competition goals, rebuilding your confidence, or simply trying to understand why your horse did that thing they did, we'll explore the research, the real talk, and the small shifts that create more clarity, connection, and joy in and out of the saddle. And if these conversations help you understand your horse or yourself just a little bit better, follow the show and share it with another horse person who might need it. It's one of the simplest ways you can help this community of loving equestrians grow. Now, grab your boots, take a deep breath. What are you waiting for? Come ride with me. Welcome, Stacey. It's great to have you on the Thinking Horse and Rider. Before we get started, can you just give us a little introduction to you and your business, Heart Centered Horsemanship?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, and this is my favorite thing to talk about. So, Heart Centered Horsemanship was started 20 years ago. I think I officially named it that. I had a business primarily starting young horses and taking horses in for retraining. So, horses and the occasional mule that had behavior issues. And so I also, at the same time, was working in a therapeutic riding center. And so those two influences have kind of shaped the way that I work with horses. And so at this time, I'm kind of shifting my business away from training horses and teaching lessons in the traditional sense to offering my mindful horsemanship courses and classes, and basically equine assisted learning. So, what can the horses teach people? And taking that beyond just the horse community. I both work with people that have their own horses that want to improve their relationship with their horse using non dominant methods and ways of building connection and relationship and understanding how the horse is responding to them. And then also people that want to integrate horses into their programs in a way that people are learning skills like self regulation, more self awareness, relationship skills, and things of that nature through interacting with the horses. And then you have therapeutic horsemanship programs where it's really just an uplifting experience. To me, it's very important that the horses are enjoying their experience as well. And so, my program is about creating experiences for the horse and the person that are mutually beneficial and enjoyable.
I love that. I love thinking about what can the horses teach us because we always think we need to teach them something. Where did your relationship with horses begin?
At Camp Cheerio when I was 10 years old. I might have been
I love
9.
it.
And I got to ride horses, and it was just the coolest thing ever. And I went home and told my dad I just had to have a horse. And we were not a horsey family by any means. Nobody rode, although my grandfather on my mother's side was very much into horses, but they lived far away. And so I never, had any kind of interaction with horses with him. Um, but maybe it was in my genes, you know. After about a year of begging, my dad did bring home a horse. I didn't really know anything. I'd ridden at summer camp, and I was scared of her. And my mom was like, well, maybe I should also learn some things about horses. So we did Pony Club together. She was a DC, and I was in the Yankee Valley Pony Club and did that for years through high school and was an event rider. That was my passion. And also fox hunted. I whipped in for the Yankee Valley Hounds. So I came from a pretty traditional background in
Hmm.
that sense.
So, how did you get to the philosophy that you work from today? So, I grew up actually in the more hunter world, but then got into eventing later. And traditionally, it's not the most mindful, heart horse centered type of
Yes.
environment, I guess.
Right. Back then, I didn't really question what I did so much. And the horse's experience. If the horse was strong, you got a bigger bitch. Looking back now, I don't want to do that. And I did it because I was told to do it.
Right.
But seeing old videos makes me very sad. I went to Davidson College. I got a degree in medical ethics, pre-med, but decided I did not want to go to medical school. So I changed my mind. And then I was like, so now what? So, I got back into working with horses. I had taught lessons all through high school and I could make money at that until I figured out what to do for a real job. I wanted to travel and things, so I did that and ended up getting involved in therapeutic riding. That kind of brought together my love of horses as well as this sort of desire to be in the healing arts. I was a NARA certified instructor. So that means I'm pretty old. So before PATH, it was NARA, the North American Riding for the Handicapped Association. And then NARA sort of added on what was called EFMA at the time, Equine Facilitated Mental Health Association, sort of
Mm.
two organizations that were related. Barbara Rector had a lot to do with starting EFMA, and she was one of my mentors, huge influence on me. And this idea of the horses being sentient beings, horses having this ability to connect us with our higher self in a sense, sort of communicate with us on a higher level, and had fortunate to have some really cool experiences with her. And so that really affected me a lot. When when it became PATH and they first offered a certification as an equine specialist in mental health and learning, that's what I wanted to do. I went to one of the first like a pilot training and then I got certified once they offered that. One of my first jobs as an equine specialist was partnering with a therapist at our center. We had a school nearby run by a group home for children. And they brought their students out once a week to do equine therapy with this counselor and myself. These kids had really horrifying stories. All had been removed from their home, and most had been abused. They saw the lunge whip and they're just like, "Oh, we're gonna hit the horse." That was kind of the expectation, and I was
Mm.
like, "No, we're not." I did not want to show them any form of dominance. And I did round penning like the Monty Roberts style and that kind of thing, which was kinder, gentler way, right? But I still was like, God, that's still kind of dominance. We're still kind
Mm.
of pushing them until they give in. You have a choice to run or to stand here, but that's dominance. So what is not how do I start these horses without dominance? How can I be congruent and do the same thing over here in my business as what I'm teaching these children? I'm not going to teach these children dominance. I think I really, at that time, made a commitment to, like, I'm going to figure this out, okay, to understand this. And so that's what the rest of my life has been about. um, and so what I discovered is that um, it's about, the setting boundaries, how we show up, all the things that I teach in my mindful horsemanship class. And it works. It works with all the horses. I've had hundreds of horses over the years, and many of them were really considered dangerous, had violent outbursts, bolting, rearing, all the things. And so changing their behavior by helping them feel safe and helping them release those triggers in their body. So they taught me a ton about the methods that I teach today, about how we build connection and how we release the blocks to connection. So that's a big piece of it. So
Oh, it's so interesting how the kids coming from that background is what led you to thinking about non-dominance. Because for me, a big part of it was being in public safety and realizing that most people think that law enforcement or even fire and rescue, it's all about being the dominant, in control person. And it really is not. Like, very little of what we did was about that. You had to control the situations in other ways because when people are either traumatized or they're so used to that, you don't get through to them.
right. So they have to feel safe to be able to really do anything, right? So that's where I
Right.
am at with the horses. The most important thing I do is keep them in the parasympathetic nervous system. I got involved with the Masterson method, many
Mhm.
years ago. I went to a training and I was like, oh my God, this is just the coolest thing. I came back and I was teaching all our volunteers at the center how to do the bladder meridian technique. The horses are yawning and licking and chewing. It was so cool. Then I just kind of followed all down that rabbit hole and about the nervous system. And that really ran parallel to, the work in mental health for people. And then
Hmm.
also, I somewhere along the line became a yoga teacher.
Right.
And then the other big addition to my program and how I work with the horses was when I met Mary Debono and started incorporating her Debono Moves into my work, which is based on the Feldenkrais method, which uses very small hands-on touch and movements. I still integrate all different types of touch, but Mary DeBono's work is my favorite at this point in time.
If something in today's conversation is making you think, okay, but how do I actually apply this with my horse? You're exactly why I created Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart. It's the course for the horse lover who loves their horse deeply, but sometimes feels like they're missing part of the conversations. Maybe you're overthinking your decisions, getting inconsistent results, or realizing that the traditional advice you've been given no longer feels right for you or your horse. Inside the course, I teach 7 essential elements of partnership that often get skipped in ordinary riding lessons, from awareness and communication to autonomy, play, boundaries, and confident leadership. This isn't about throwing away everything you already know. We're going all the way back to the beginning. It's about adding the understanding and nuance that help your existing skills work better. You'll learn how to create more clarity, responsiveness, willingness, and connection without relying on more force, more pressure, or trying to become someone you're not. You can learn more about Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart to the link in the description of the episode. But let's jump back into it. Some people, when they hear the word non-dominance or choice, they assume this means passive, a passive role or weak boundary, letting the horse do whatever they
Right.
want. How do you define combining consent or at least choice with clarity and safety?
Okay, so this is really important because what I think people fail to understand sometimes is that you have to set effective boundaries in order to be a positive influence on your horse. So you've got to be able to hold your own space, and I call it being the tree. We do actual physical grounding practices where I have people organize their body in a way to resist a force without applying a force. And
Mm,
and so this idea of being able to hold your space, to set boundaries. So if that means swinging a rope or waving a wand, whatever, it's so important that horse responds to your boundaries, and then they can start to organize around you. So this has nothing to do with training. It's how they're experiencing you in that moment. Can they push and pull on you? Being aware of that is really key, and most people are not.
no,
Most
most
people, when
people
the
are
horse
not.
pulls on them, they just go with them, and the horse pushes and they back up. And there's little details, right? And those little
Mhm.
details are happening in everything we do together. From the moment we go in the pasture, everything is equal in their eyes. They're learning
Right,
equally from every experience.
right,
So, how we engage with them in all the things that we do is really important. That's what mindful horsemanship is about, not just, the exercises in the arena, but like how we are
right,
engaging all the time. So
right.
yeah, so they need to learn to organize around you, but also that you're safe and not threatening. You can resist a force without applying a force, right? And then
Yep.
within that space, you can encourage the horse to soften, to release bracing and resistance so that they will more easily comply. You can add a little positive reinforcement. So, like, I'm going to get a yes once I make sure the horse has all their needs taken care of and I coax them a little bit,
Right.
I'm going to get the yes. It might be like, I guess so. Like
Right.
if you say so,
Right, right. Today it might be
but
a,
we'll
oh,
take it.
oh, okay.
I run a lesson program. We have to do the things, but I might offer them a little more positive reinforcement. We might spend a little more time on the Debono moves. And we might do more of the what I call the feel good stuff. So if
Hmm.
my horse is all of a sudden doesn't really want to be caught, I'm like, okay, we need to not just pop the saddle on and go for a ride. We need to go back and do the other things so that they're having a good experience. Do we ride them in a way that feels good in their body? Do we help them find healthy movement with a rider? And that's where the dressage comes in. To me, dressage is about developing healthy movement with a rider and that softness and suppleness and all those things that are so important. It's not about what they look like,
Right.
how
Do
it
they
feels.
feel good? I always
Yeah,
think, we want to make them feel better. We want them to feel good
exactly.
when we're riding them, not feel worse.
And this is something I, explain to my students. Touch can feel good and it can feel very not good.
Right.
Movement can feel good and it can feel
Mm.
very not good.
Very not good. Right.
So,
So,
how can we make sure our horses are having a good experience?
yeah.
Yeah.
And what does mindfulness mean to you in the context of being with horses? Because I feel like a lot of people just struggle with mindfulness in general,
Hmm.
let alone when you put a horse in front of them.
Right. So, this is why I start my clinics on the mat or chair options or whatever, but we're off the horse. We're not even near a horse when we began. And so that we notice our breathing, we tune into our bodies, we tune into the movements, how we're doing the movements, all the things that the horses are going to respond to. We bring awareness before we even start to engage with the horse. Mindfulness with the horses means noticing what the horse is doing in each moment and responding in a way that creates the outcome that we want. We have to be aware of the horse and of our own responses and be intentional about it. So if a horse spooks, our unconscious response is going to be to tense up, to hold our breath, to feel the need to control. Our more aware, intentional response could be to calm ourselves, to take a deep breath, to soften in our body, and to offer our horse reassurance and connection. It's those details.
Yeah, I love that. You say that mindfulness horsemanship is less about training horses and more about educating the humans. I think that's so true. What are we asking the humans to learn then?
I guess we'll start with how we show up, and that is how do you regulate your own nervous system? In other words, there are things that we can do that you might think of it as activating the vagus nerve or, however you want. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm sorry, I've got a fly buzzing around.
Farm life, right?
I do have horses right outside my door, so it happens. So, how do we use our breathing, our awareness, and our presence to be a calming influence? Or if we need to be an activating influence, how can we bring our energy up? So, being aware of our energy and being able to intentionally, what I call grounding or calming versus activating and energizing. How are we using our energy? But then the other thing is how are we using our movement? So are we moving towards them, away from them? Are we being still? How are we using our body language? Our position relative to the horse. So if I'm behind them, I might be pushing them. If I'm beside them, I might be turning them. If I'm in front, I might be stopping or leading. Understanding how horses communicate with each other naturally. I talk about teaching people the language of horses. And once you understand the language of horses, you can communicate effectively with any horse. You don't have to train them. However, you might have to sort of remind them that they can talk to you in that way because sometimes their training creates a different response. And I'll give an example. I've got a little horse with me right now who he's was very frozen, but he had some outbursts and kind of violent explosions, leaping in the air, kicking out, things like that. And so when I first asked him to go forward, he did not go forward. He was frozen. He was like, I don't know what to do. And so it's not that he doesn't speak horse language. It's just that he had thought he was supposed to not move no
Right,
matter what I did. As I waved my hands around, he thought he was just supposed to stand there and not move. So I had to teach him, like, oh, it's okay to move so that he
right.
could go back to communicating in horse language, if that makes sense. It's something that any horse can understand, but you also have to have a certain connection with them. So that's another piece of it. How do you develop connection? So we can give them food. That's one way that gets their interest. But I want to go beyond treats. So the horse just follows your movement and you're not making them do the thing, you're doing the thing. It's embodied in you. So this is a whole mind body integration, which is really beneficial because a lot of people are kind of disconnected. I work with a lot of kids and it amazes me. Sometimes, we'll be on the mat and I'll have them do a movement. I'll talk about, well, what sensation does this create in your body? And they're like, nothing, I feel nothing. And I'm like, well, okay, I understand you're pretty flexible. Maybe do a little bit more, but to get them to actually feel something, to be aware of
Right.
a sensation, it's beneficial to wake up those connections. Those are all things that we can learn from horses.
And how do you define a horse's no? For instance, is every hesitation a refusal? And how do we respond to them without overriding their no or negating their no and yet still get that yes in the end? I feel like a lot of people have this idea that if you allow the horse to say no, they're never going to say yes. I think that's because that's something that is taught to us very early in our riding education. But when you think about that logically and you think about how we interact with other humans, if I tell somebody no all the time, they eventually stop asking, right? Or if I allow my kids to say no, I don't want to do that, that doesn't mean that now they think that they can do whatever they want. They just know that, okay, well, that thing I get a choice, something else, I may have to say yes to. So how
Yeah.
do you make that distinction with horses, and then how do you teach people that it's okay if the horse says no, you can ask again later and you might get a yes. But how do you respect that no and not feel like, "Oh my God, they're never going to do anything."
When I was young and I was learning, the message was you have to win.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
you
Don't let them win. Sure.
don't let them win, don't back down. So here's what I do because if I honestly let horses say no to everything, I would never have gotten anybody to pay me to be a trainer. You
So
know?
true, right? Right?
I'm pretty sure they would have sent them to somebody else. I did not have the luxury of doing this just recreationally. I actually had to get results, but I wanted to be the person that they were sending their horse to. So I had to balance that. How do I honor my ideals and also get results so that they don't send them somewhere else? And I can still get business. When the horse says no, so say they freeze, they're not going forward, or they're trying to avoid the thing. Maybe they're running, pulling away, or backing up, or running into you, or whatever, running past you. I say there's like 5 directions they can go. That's pretty much
Right?
it. So I'm trying to dig. My strategy is I don't let the avoidance work. I hold my position. I don't let them get me out of position. I set a boundary, so I'm going to hold this space. And then within that space, I'm going to give them time to come back into that parasympathetic nervous system. Hold that space without adding pressure and make it a safe space and make it a pleasurable space. This is another place where I love the Debono moves because it really helps to release bracing. You're bringing their nervous system into a calmer state. It can become a very familiar thing that is a very useful tool. And so I'm going to give them time to soften, to become curious about the thing, perhaps, or maybe give them some positive reinforcement to explore the thing, but give them time. I was working with a horse last weekend, and it was my first session with her, and she was stomping at flies. I was like, well, try to put some fly spray on. And the lady was like, she does not like fly spray. I was like, okay, good. Let's see what happens. And hard no, the hard no. And she's backing up and trying to run past me. I'm just following and going with her and encouraging her to respond to my boundaries, to soften and relax. I never sprayed her with the fly spray that day. The best I could do was spray a rag and rub her. And even that was a struggle. I did not get a yes or even a I'll think about it on the fly spray bottle. But what I did was I blocked her avoidance and I got her to soften in that space. But I progressed as far as I could in that session. I had to hold the space. Um, but um, what can I get them to say yes to, and how can I break it down into baby steps? How can I get there gradually? I am very persistent, which I think all of us that have made it in the horse industry are. I think that's just kind of a given.
Yeah, that is one of the places where I think you do need to train the people more than the horses, because when people have that happen, when the horse says no, they are the ones that are usually triggered. The horse may be like, I don't know about that, or I
Yeah.
don't like the fly spray. And then the human is automatically activated for whatever
Yes.
reason. And why? Really, what does it matter to you if the horse doesn't like the fly spray? I feel like people fall into, not always, but a lot of times they fall into one of two camps, right? It's the camp of I am going to fly spray you whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Or
Or,
you'll never have fly spray.
right. And it's
And
like,
neither one are gonna are working.
right,
And yeah, yes, exactly. My horsemanship is more about helping people who need to pick out their horses' hooves or trim their horses or put the fly spray on or just those kinds of things that we don't even think about as being important. But if
right,
you're the caretaker, these things are important. And not only that, if you can work through this fly spray thing, boy, is that going to open up the possibilities of what you're doing in the arena, on the trail, whatever it is.
yeah,
So like the same thing's going to apply to the horse trailer. If the horse is avoiding the horse trailer, then how do I hold that space without adding pressure or making it a scarier experience, but also not let them avoid it? Like that's not an option. We're just going to hang out here until it's okay, or, however many treats it takes, but we're not going to avoid it. And so the only way for that to work is to teach the people how to block the avoidance and hold that space. One of the reasons I shifted my business model is because with all of these horses that I've worked with, these rescued horses and, horses with, challenges, I saw that they would quickly regress no matter what I did. Those behaviors are going to surface at some point. And
hmm,
if the person doesn't respond to them in a certain way, then they're going to have problems. I can't just wave my wand and be like, oh, no, it's just
right.
magically gone.
Magically
Like,
gone.
I just don't.
Right,
A lot of trainers feel pressured to make those results happen. And that's again why I've shifted away from competition because it creates a lot of pressure. Why can't just the enjoyment of our horses in the day to day be
right.
enough?
Be
And
enough.
I get it's fun to go and do stuff. And I grew up competing and I was, absolutely addicted to cross country and, lived for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think that the people that are offering the sport should keep the animal welfare in mind. When you're sacrificing that, like, why? What are you even doing? Like, why?
Right. What is the
We love
point? Yeah.
horses, right? You can have a lot of fun with horses without pushing them to such extreme. And I think one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is just enjoying the quality of the moment and not feeling like we're just struggling through to get to this big, glorious thing over here,
Right.
which really isn't that glorious. I mean,
Right. What's the
competition,
glory, right?
you're right. It's like, well, my
Yeah.
stomach hurts a little bit. I'm sweating in this coat, and
Right. And I'm gonna get a stupid
like,
10-cent ribbon, right? Yeah. Yeah, I have a ton of them though.
actually, I do have students that want to compete, and I'm starting to look into online showing. So maybe we'll
Hmm.
go that route.
My horse, who's now 32, we did dressage primarily, and we had the best time. He really taught me how to go about going to shows, do the competing. Yes, want to be successful, but also have his best interests in mind. And he's a big ham. He loved to be in the show ring. But if I was too much, he did not perform well. I had to be in a certain state to get really good rides from this horse. So it was such a great education. I think it can be done. I think there are some people out there that are doing it or at least
Yeah.
trying to do it well. But yeah, it's hard. It's
I
hard.
agree. And honestly, I had a lot of fun competing. And if it weren't for the time and the expense and that I just am focused on other things, I'm not opposed to it. I'd like to have more students that are competing so that the value of this approach could be seen. I have a kid that's come to some of my classes that does barrel racing, who I would not consider my niche market. But we have a lot of barrel racers where I live. And she was like, I did the stuff that you showed me before a barrel race, and we ran our best race. I do programs for kids, and I do my mindful horsemanship classes. And doing clinics now would be sort of the equivalent of going to a competition for me. Like I get just as much thrill and excitement or
Yes.
more, So to me, I think that's replaced competing, doing the clinics. So anyway.
I agree. We talked about humans and how we can sort of hold the space if the horse is saying no, but horses continually read our nervous systems, and then people are
Yes.
conflicted.
Yes.
So, what might they notice first, and then how might they respond to that conflict?
I really see this because the same horse responds very differently to different people depending on what they're bringing. For instance, if the person is holding their breath or tense in their body, that their horse is going to very likely tense up. I have one little gelding that came with anxiety, who's been at our farm for a long time and is great, super safe with kids and everything. But that anxiety will come back up if he's around a person that's very tense and very nervous. I had a family come out. They were visiting a student and they wanted to participate, and I let them do it. They were being kind of impatient. I let the girl lead him without really going through all the things. And she did all the wrong things, and poor Denny just had a little moment and pulled away from her. I saw that he was responding to her. And it happened very quickly. Nobody got hurt or anything like that, but it just reminded me because this horse is very safe and dependable in general. But it reminded me, like I was saying, about how those things can come back up because he kind of started out that way when he arrived. Another example is Zella, who was another horse that I adopted. And then, fortunately, the people that own the farm that I teach out of bought her. And she's a little Arabian mare who was abandoned and was, considered very difficult. She couldn't be caught. That's why she was abandoned. And would act out very spooky, explosive type behavior. Now she's like really one of my best kids' horses. I've got 4-year-olds trotting her around. and but if a student is leading her and they get distracted, if they're not present, she
Hmm.
gets very irritated. She's pinning her ear, she's
Hmm.
doing all the mare things. And so I know immediately you need to focus. Where are you? I see that, and I know you do too. I think anybody that teaches that really has that kind of awareness realizes sometimes it's like, okay, like something's going on and I can't even see it, but there's some tension somewhere in there. And can you let that go? Because your horse is really having a hard time with
I always
that.
say, yeah, the horse is telling on you. I might not know what it is, but the horse is saying that
Yeah,
something is not right.
right. Once we start reading that and realizing it's not like, hey, you need to make the horse blah, 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 but you need to do the thing. And
Right.
then the horse shifts.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that people do the things that they do, and we were taught the things that we were about how you handle horses, was all based off safety, right? So, I think a lot of it is just years of fear-based thinking. But how do you think mindfulness improves those practical matters, like safety, timing, boundaries?
Mhm.
Because that's one of the things that people always say, well, it's not safe if you don't do it this way, or it's not safe.
Well, this is a big theme of the book that I'm working on. Why do humans need to be dominant?
I have so many thoughts about this, Stacey. It would have to be a whole other episode.
It comes down to safety, right? So there's
Hmm.
something that's bigger and more powerful than we are. And so we have this sense that, well, if I can control it,
Hmm.
and have power over it,
Hmm.
and it submits to me, that I'm safer. This mentality has kind of ruled the horse world for a very, very long time. I think the Native Americans might have had a little different approach, but the Mongolians were probably all about dominance, you know. They,
Hmm.
so this is where we started, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we haven't gotten far from that. And um, okay, so when the horse submits, that is not a state of the parasympathetic nervous system. So, the sympathetic nervous system, the ways that we cope with threat, can be fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. A lot of what people consider good training is putting a horse into the fawn or submissive response. In other words, I will do what you want, just don't hurt me.
Hmm.
And so that is not the same as feeling safe. When the horse feels safe, we are actually truly safer. They're much less likely to go quickly to a flight or a fight response. So, a horse that's tense and nervous, they're the ones that, like, I don't know what happened. They just started bucking out of the blue. I'm like, well, no, they didn't. They did not feel safe before they started bucking, right? So we can learn to read the signs and to restore a sense of safety. And then to even ground the horse more so that if we think of this sort of on a scale, appears like pure flight bolting, and then down here is having a nap. Ideally, we're kind of somewhere in here as we're engaging with our horses. When they start to escalate and come up here, we need to recognize that and bring it back down. And then for a horse that's sort of always here, we might want to bring their baseline down. Learning how to do that creates a much safer situation than putting the horse into a submissive state. I have a horse with me right now. The lady is just absolutely convinced this horse is not safe. She doesn't want him around children. She thinks he's dangerous because he's acted out. My first impression with him is, well, he's in a freeze state. I got him out of the freeze state and then he was kind of avoiding me, but I allowed him to move as he needed to self-regulate and then connect. And so I did a lot of work with him off the line and stuff like that. He actually is very, very sweet. And I consider him a potential kid's horse, but I won't tell this lady that because why argue, I'm just hoping one of my clients buys him and he'll be her granddaughter's horse down the road. So again, a horse that is in that submissive state might act out if they are no longer being held in that submissive state, if the person's not being dominant. I think you've probably seen this. I've seen it many, many times. Somebody gets a horse, the horse is like, oh, they just behaved perfectly. They did everything like a little robot, da da da, and they got him home, and all of a sudden they're a little demon because that person is giving them more choice and sort of having a different relationship. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can say no, great. So sometimes we have to allow things to fall apart a little bit and then we
Hmm.
build a new relationship. But asking people to go through that process can be a big ask. It's kind of like with the barefoot thing. I remember back when it was pretty revolutionary to go barefoot. And this
Hmm.
idea of, well, I'd have to transition my horse. And, we take the shoes off and you're like, oh my God, they're lame on gravel. We can't do this. You have to know that it's a process. We give it time and it'll work out and it'll be better. We have to let go of the control, allow them to say no, allow them to have choice, and then create a relationship in which they cooperate because they feel safe. Why wouldn't they do what you ask? Ask your friend to do
Right.
something. I don't
Asking
have
them.
to condition my friends
Right.
to do what I want, right? I just ask.
And if you're not asking them to do anything that they wouldn't really normally do, you could say some of the competition things are maybe not something they would choose to do in the natural environment, but they're all things they're capable of doing,
Yeah.
right? And they may
Yeah.
do at any given times.
I think some horses really enjoy all of that. And you got to kind of know your horse, just knowing what they like. Little Zella, She just really likes things that feel very safe, and she doesn't really want to run and jump, and she will trot 4-year-olds around the arena. She's great at that. But then other horses, they just think that's so much fun to go out on
Right.
adventures and go out in the world. Everybody's different, you know.
Exactly. And we talked a little bit about what you just mentioned before we started recording about how when people start to show up differently and they start to notice and ask different things of the horse, and then things kind of fall apart and they think, oh my gosh, I don't know anything, I'm terrible, especially if they're longtime horse people and they come into this new way, and then it's all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I just need to give up because I'm terrible and I don't know anything. I see that a lot. How do you navigate that with people that you're trying to help find a different way and then also find a different way for their horses?
This is a tough one. I'm gradually getting more people that are kind of on board, but it's not something I can convince somebody to do if they don't already want that. I think it's many people aren't clear on what they want. They don't
Mhm.
have an opinion on dominance or non-dominance or anything like that. They're like, oh, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what the judge at the horse show says we're supposed to do. So we got to, get the ribbon or whatever. They're motivated by things like that.
Right.
So I need to be working with people who are actually more motivated by the quality of their relationship with their horse. Now, these are things that are difficult to measure. So they're not measured in monetary value. They're not given awards. How good does it feel? How much love is in your heart? Like,
All right.
how do you measure that when we're doing Debono moves? We talk a lot about the quality of the movement. We're doing
Mhm.
really simple things, really tiny little things, but with a lot of awareness and a lot of quality. And that's what mindfulness is. It is not about having more. In fact, often we find more pleasure in doing less and having simpler things. And this can apply to life in general. Having more stuff doesn't make you happy. If you have more stuff you have to worry about and take care of and stress about, right? Having
Hmm.
less can actually give you a higher quality of life. So mindful horsemanship is about doing less with more awareness and then realizing that you're kind of building the foundation for whatever the thing is that you want to do. I've on the basics and to being able to do the simple things with the most quality, your emotional experience with your horse and their emotional experience. And I think that when you get used to feeling the joy that you can
Hmm.
feel with your horses, that you understand that. And if you've never experienced it, I don't know. I'm sorry about what you're missing, but I don't know how to make people value that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a hard thing just to see somebody struggling and say, I know you could have a better feeling, but you got to trust me. And they're just not in that place.
Well, and do you struggle with this? People are like, is this correct? Is this correct? Is this correct? I'm like, how does it feel? And they're like, well,
Right.
I don't know. I'm so in my head. My body is like completely in another planet. So getting people to value what they're feeling in the present moment.
Yes. Oh,
Like
yes. And
that is not as a culture where we're at.
no, we're definitely not there. When I first start teaching them, I'll ask them a question like, how did that feel? And they just stare at you. Oh, I
Because
don't
they
know. Was it
weren't.
right?
This brings up a story. Many years ago, I taught a group of girls at a little hunter jumper barn. And if the horses had to be kept in because of weather, they would have them in the round pen running them around. And I'd say, well, what are we doing here? Oh, we're getting the energy out. I'm like, well, don't you want to go jump? You might want some energy for that. And trying to
Right.
convince
Right.
them that the round pen was for communicating and building relationship and not just running them around to get the energy out. And then when I would teach them in the arena, well, how does that feel? And that all they cared about was it wasn't going to get them a ribbon at the
Right.
show.
Right. It's so funny. I was lucky because a coach that I had for most of my teenage years, he taught me The first thing was never ever ride a horse like you can ride it. If it's somebody else's horse, ride it for that person. Do not ride it for you because they're not going to be able to recreate that. The other thing was feel is actually so important. If it feels good, if you can get to that perfect jump every time and feel that rhythm, the rest of it doesn't matter because if you feel that rhythm and you get into that rhythm and you keep that rhythm, you're going to win the class.
Yeah.
So why did we get into this like analytical, is that right? Because if it doesn't feel good, then either you or the horse are struggling to make it happen and you're not going to get a good score.
And this is cultural, and this is where there's kind of a paradigm shift happening. This is something that has kind of driven me crazy for a long time. Our horse world is primarily made up of women, like most of the horse owners, riders, but most of the trainers, high level, are men still,
Hmm.
and or maybe have always been, right? So I'm always like, why do all these women feel like they need a man to tell them that they're doing it right? It just would infuriate me. I'm like, trust your sense, trust your intuition, trust what you're feeling. These are all the more feminine qualities. So we're up against the patriarchy, is what I'm telling you. Like, we
That
have
is
been
true too.
trained to believe that somebody has to tell us when we're doing it right.
That's true.
Where I didn't realize that what I was doing following this path was going to be kind of revolutionary in a way. But I'm like, wow, this is really going against a very ingrained belief. Somebody's out there measuring you to see if you're living up to it.
I think it's so funny because that coach that taught me those things would be the least feminine man you probably would ever be around. If you saw him in the grocery store or whatever. This is a dude's dude. He was taught by a woman, who is a legendary hunter trainer, but was that what shaped him? Was it his own parents, his mom? I don't know. So
Well,
it's
the
such an
origin,
interesting
but the
thing.
origin of the hunters is a horse that would be pleasant to ride in the hunt field.
Right.
And I tried to go back to what is true, what is real. So let's talk about an example of leg position. To me, a correct leg position is the one that you would have if you were standing on the ground. So if I
Right.
got in like a chair pose,
Right.
first of all, my back would not be round. It would be extended and basically a 2 point. And you see all these hunters with their round backs, which I can't understand. There is exactly one position my leg can be in that I would not be falling forward or falling backwards.
Yep.
To me, that's a correct leg position.
Hmm.
You know, you can have all these fads. Let's see who can be double jointed and have their heels as far forward as possible. But I'm trying to get back to that balance, that center. What is naturally the most sustainable, the most sense of ease and flow. So it's very Taoist. The
Yeah.
Tao cannot be defined. You just kind of have to find the flow,
Right.
right?
People have a hard time with that, though. In this culture, we want defined, we want to
Yeah.
know. Someone feels drawn to this approach, heart centered horsemanship. What learning opportunities are you currently offering?
So I have an online course that I have recently created, and I offer with that coaching and weekly Zoom chats. And I have in-person classes twice a week in Mount Ola, North Carolina. People can come to a mindful horsemanship class. And I offer clinics. So if somebody wants to host a clinic at their facility, they can contact me and get information about that. I also offer opportunities for nonprofits. So whether it's an equine assisted learning or therapy center or an equine rescue, if they want to host a clinic as a fundraiser, they can keep all of the auditor fees for the clinic.
Love that. Each week, we give our listeners a 10-minute experiment, something small and concrete they can try with their horses. What would you invite them to try this week?
Okay, so I'm ready for this one. It's going to sound easier than it is, but the practice is doing nothing. Wu Wei is the Taoist term that's closest. It's a state of relaxed awareness. Okay, so we're going to start by taking a deep belly breath or a diaphragmatic breath to inhale, pulling the diaphragm down so the belly expands. And you might visualize your body as a big balloon, kind of blowing up as you inhale. And then as you exhale, you're just gonna imagine if you just like pinched the end of the balloon and you let the air out slowly, maybe through your nose or your mouth, but you're just gonna slowly exhale, pulling the diaphragm up to squeeze the air out. So taking a nice deep full breath, and you're gonna let your eyes soften. In yoga, this is called drishti, a focused gaze. So you find a point in front of you, like your eyes go soft. Sally Swift in Centered Writing talks about soft eyes. Same thing. Kind of expand your peripheral vision. This can help to put you in more of that parasympathetic nervous system as well. With each exhale, just noticing where in your body you can let go of effort, let go of unnecessary muscle tension and effort. Maybe you imagine that you have a cord attached to the crown of your head that's sort of drawing you up towards the sky, and your shoulders and hips come into alignment, and you're just letting go of any extra effort, doing the least amount possible. This is going back to nothing. And the more we can come back to this centered state, we're letting go of tension. Maybe if we're holding the rope with our horse, we're going to put a loop in the rope. Now, I have to be able to set a clear boundary and let that go to be able to go back to nothing. So if I am holding tension and I'm holding on to my horse to keep them from moving away or running me over or whatever, I can't let go. I can't go back to nothing. Letting go of pressure on the reins, going back to nothing. Letting go of gripping with the legs. We can always release more. So I say releasing tension is like doing your laundry, right? Or cleaning your house. Like you're never done. It's always more happening. So you can always just keep doing a little more, going deeper into that. And when we go back to nothing, everything we do, each cue for our horse, is going to have more clarity. So I use the analogy of a blank canvas. If I have a big white canvas with nothing on it and I put a mark on it, it's going to be really clear and easy to identify. But if I just have marks and marks and marks everywhere, and then I put a mark on it, you're gonna be like, I don't even see it, right? So when we're constantly doing stuff, our horse is tuning a lot of it out. The more we can go back to nothing, the more they're going to respond to each thing. So we have much more clarity. All right, so whether we're on the ground or we're riding, this is a great thing to practice when you're riding. Can you do a movement and then go back to nothing? And then do another movement and then go back to nothing.
I love that. I always love going back to nothing. It's such a great exercise because most people don't practice it at all or
And
enough
it's
or
not
should.
it's not a passive thing, right? Doing nothing. It's sort of like non-dominance is not passive. We feel the need for control and dominance because we're trying to stay safe.
What do you wish every person understood before they asked anything of a horse?
I think the most important thing is that horses are very perceptive and that they are always going to be responding to us and what we're actually doing in each moment. And so rather than focusing on what we are making the horse do, if we shift our awareness to what we are doing in response to what the horse is doing in each moment, then we can create the outcomes that we actually want. So often the horse is responding to the person, and the person is trying to teach them to do something else. And it's a lot of conditioning and a lot of hours and a lot of pressure or a lot of treats or a lot of whatever. And there's a much easier way when we start noticing what we're doing in response to the horse and what we need to do to create the outcome that we want.
Thank you, Stacey, for helping us consider not only what we ask of our horses, but who we become when we are in an actual relationship with them and have a connection, and we aren't just asking them to do things
Yes.
because.
Yes, because we were told to do the things. When we start to shift into this curious mindset of what can the horse teach us, and what can they actually bring and what can they actually understand, I think people will realize the horses are much more intelligent than they ever thought, much more capable of cooperating by choice. And then when we have that experience with them, the quality of that emotional experience is just so far beyond anything we could have if we were making them do it.
I agree. It's perfect.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about this stuff. So
I
I hope people
appreciate you
are
coming on the
interested and
show
want
and
to
giving
learn
us a
more.
little more wisdom.
Very much
Thank you.
enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, horse fiends, thanks for spending time with me today. If this episode got your gears turning, don't let the conversation end here. Come join us inside the Happy Horse and Rider Lab, my free community on Skool.com, where you can share what you're noticing, ask questions, and connect with other thoughtful horse people. We're going to keep exploring how these ideas apply to you and your horse. If you're ready for more structured support, you can also find the Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart inside the Skool community classroom. Don't worry, the link is in the show notes. I can't wait to see you there.